today, Gen AI is everywhere. Well, in a world where you have all of this like limitless content, how do you decide what to send to each user? When you have 3 million pieces of content to potentially send to someone, a marketer is not going to go in and make those different rules, right?
Welcome to Content Kingdom. This is your backstage pass to the people, tools, and the trends shaping the future of content marketing.
And welcome to Content Kingdom, where we explore the strategies and the people that prove that content is king. I'm your host, David G. Ewing, and with me is Alec Haase. Alec, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Cannot complain.
Awesome. Alec, you have written a super cool article that I can't wait to jump into. But as the GM for AI decisioning at Hightouch, I think there's a lot to unpack today. Before we do that, I just wanted to go through a few things in your background that I thought were really cool. So you got your start at Red Ventures. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. And for people that don't know Red Ventures, I mean, this is the place where Lonely Planet, The Points Guy, this is some great content in here, best colleges, that type of stuff. And I read a little bit about some of your early work. It looks like you tackled some crazy content for the post office online. That seemed pretty cool. But then from there, you went and you dug in deep into the marketing stack across like the whole Red Ventures portfolio. And so my question to you is, what was the biggest takeaway from that experience after looking at all of those different companies?
Yeah, I think Red Ventures was an amazing starting point for my career. It's not a very well-known company, but the brands are very well-known. They have some of the highest trafficked websites from an SEO perspective, from a marketplace perspective, really across a number of different verticals, whether that's financial services, where you mentioned it. They have like the Points Guy, which is also travel. They have Bankrate, creditcards.com, a bunch of really cool brands. So what was really cool with my start there was I got to really see the behind the scenes, behind the MarTech stack, and honestly, just the whole technology stack behind all those different types of companies. Kind of looked at it as almost a consulting experience coming out of school where I just got to see so many different brands all in a short period of time. So for me, I got to just jump headfirst into tech, but really getting to see it at scale across so many different verticals and use cases.
I think one of the cool things about the time period when you were there is you picked that up right before the pandemic and then continued on until the pandemic ended and we were kind of, it was starting to be in the rearview mirror. And I think that is such a pivotal time period. AI is the next inflection. That's where we're going to spend most of our time today. But what's the biggest lesson or takeaway in MarTech that you saw as a result of just kind of that epic of time?
Yeah. I would say like the biggest shift for me since really the beginning of my career has been the centralization of data in the data warehouse has really unlocked a lot of opportunities for marketers to actually work better with data teams. So platforms like Snowflake, like BigQuery, like Databricks, organizations everywhere are centralizing that data into cloud data warehouses, data lakes. Data teams are investing tons of time and effort there. And one of the things that we saw was like bringing marketers to that data store, giving them the tools that they needed to go and actually work hand in hand with their data teams and put that data to work, whether that you brought up AI. So whether that's ML scores that are happening inside of those types of platforms or just customer data in general. So there's this new breed of MarTech that's really stood out in the last, call it 3 years. That's really centered on this idea of composability. Where it's sitting on top of that data store and actually helping kind of bring marketers and data teams better together.
Yes, this topic of composability is something I want to talk about. So let's pivot to Hightouch. And so, in 22, you join Hightouch, and I want to talk about what a CDP is. But before we dive into that, I thought I would maybe try to address this idea of composability. So I think most of our audience knows what a CDP or customer data platform is. And in my own words, I would just say it's, if you're not familiar with it, it is the world's greatest profile that you can build, right? Like if you're a retailer and you want to build a profile of the people who visit your retail locations, you can aggregate every purchase they make online, every store visit, every piece of demographic information they give you, every purchase, all of those different things, plus a million other attributes and things you can find from third-party sources, and you can bring it all together. And that's your CDP. And now you can market to, people with brown hair, blue eyes, and are left-handed who went to your store yesterday, and build that audience, right? And so that whatever you want to do. Now, you guys at Hightouch talk about composable CDP, and I don't think it's reasonable for our audience to really know much about that. So, can you explain that? What is a composable CDP?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics. So like you said, the dream of the CDP has been to really centralize all of your data, create these very rich customer profiles, and most importantly, give marketing teams the tools that they need to go and actually put that to use, right? So they can build audiences and send them to Facebook, or build an audience and send it to Salesforce Marketing Cloud so that they can go run remarketing campaigns. I think the hard part there is that's always been a dream. And if you've worked with a CDP like me, you've probably have scars up and down your arms from the pain points of dealing with one, and really hitting any type of scale is almost impossible. So the whole idea behind Hightouch was many of the early builders of the CDP space. Two of our founders came from a CDP called Segment. I'd say, honestly, a third of our probably first 30 employees all came from CDPs. The whole idea behind that was, yes, it set out to solve the right vision, but it was just doing so on the wrong architecture. Like I said before, organizations were storing data inside of the data warehouse, the Snowflakes, the Databricks, the BigQueries of the world. And instead of going and creating another source of data that marketing teams could operate off of in the CDP, we believe that, hey, you should simply just use that data store and give marketers all the capabilities that they need to turn that data store into your CDP. So the whole idea behind Hightouch is you still get the event collection, you still get the audience activation, you still get the identity resolution, but this time it's on top of the data store that your team already has. So we don't store any data. It's all entirely just the data that's in your own infrastructure, which is why we've honestly been able to blow up as a company, is because enterprises everywhere, they just want to use the data that they already have in their systems. It's also quite flexible from like a modeling standpoint. CDPs really started with the concept of events and users. They didn't think about all the other entities that you would want to consider in a marketing campaign. So my favorite example is PetSmart. They want to run birthday campaigns, not for users, but for their pets. In a CDP, that's a quite difficult relationship to model, not just a user, but a user to their dog, and then the dog's date of birthday, right? Like that was really hard for them to do in a platform like a Salesforce. But once you have a platform like Hightouch sitting on top of the data warehouse, it's quite easy. So you get a lot of flexibility with it as well. And one of the things that I liked at Red Ventures was it was entirely modular. So we didn't need all the pieces of a CDP. We didn't want to pay for all the pieces of a CDP, but there were pieces that we certainly did need on top of our data warehouse. So long explanation there, but the whole idea is a modular CDP. This time, though, it's sitting on top of your data warehouse. What we've seen is most of the CDP market, ever since we came out with a bit of a spicy content campaign around CDPs are dead and friends don't let friends buy a CDP, most of the CDP market has followed suit to where they are now claiming composability, claiming to integrate really well with the data warehouses. But we've really built this way since day one.
All right. I'm going to back you up on this claim, and then I want to dive a little deeper. So I got I got an email this morning, and it's from a guy in Europe. He's the CEO of a company. I won't say his name or the company's name, but the gist of his email is that he is asking for my help because he is super pissed that he has this beautiful stack of stuff. Again, I won't say with who, but the email says 75% of the cost of this damn stack is the CDP, and it's the only piece that hasn't worked. And so, he wants some adjustments. So anyway, I might have a lead for you later, but we'll talk about that offline. The thing is, though, is that this is really hard. And I'll give you some other examples. Like you talked about pets and being like, well, I want to celebrate the pet's birthday, not the consumer's birthday. Well, if you think that's a one-off case, I can tell you that I've worked with utilities, and in a utility, you might have, dad on the lease, but then, when mom calls or, the kids call with a problem with the bill, you have all kinds of system validation problems just trying to figure out who the hell am I talking to, and should I be talking to them about this bill, right? Or, you talk about a healthcare company, and, mom and dad have a sick kid, and, you have to send emails out. So the patient is the kid, but you don't want to send an email to the kid. You want to send it to mom and dad. So just simple things like that, which seem intuitive until you start to represent it in data. And then all of a sudden, it's hell on earth. So Alec, let's go one step further on composability. I want to get a little more concrete for this. So let's take this mythical CEO I just talked about, right? He's got, let's say he's got a CRM system. He's got a service system, 5 other systems. He wants to put in a composable CDP from Hightouch. What's different, right? Because I think the audience is still thinking, well, I suck all the information into some massive black box database, and now I've got it all in there. And now I can start to do my stuff. But that's not what you're saying, right? You're saying that all that information just stays in those systems. So give me a clearer picture of this. Help me understand for the audience, like, what does it mean to be composable?
Yeah. So we treat, let's say someone's investing in Snowflake. It's a leading data warehouse, right? So let's say that someone has all their data in Snowflake. The way that Hightouch works is we just treat Snowflake as a source. So we hook into Snowflake, and then you define your data model of, sure, you probably have thousands of tables inside of Snowflake, right? Your data team is probably working on so many different places. You just simply define the data that you care about. I care about my users table. I care about, in the case of PetSmart, maybe it's my loyalty table. Maybe it's my pet table. Maybe it's my stores table, right? And then maybe events like purchases or other behavioral events. So your data team sets that up once. They just say, like, these are the tables that marketers should have access to, and this is what we care about. Once that's set up, marketers then just go. So like the only setup is actually getting that like layer in place, which, depending on how complex it is, I mean, it should only take a couple hours to get going. So like the time to value is insane. Like we had one of the largest, I can't name them publicly, but one of the largest casinos in the US, they migrated off of one of those all-in-one suites in a matter of 90 days. Everything from top to bottom, from event collection all the way down into audience activation. Like the time to value is crazy because it's the data that you already have. You don't have to re-architect your systems. You don't have to worry about getting it into the CDP. It's just, we're just reading off of what's already there. So it's quite fast from a time to value perspective. Again, we're just working off of your data model.
So I guess a good way to think about it is, you know, a composable CDP versus a regular CDP is like going to a buffet versus like ordering your food, right? Like we don't have to wait for the cook to like make all the stuff. We just go over, we just scoop off and grab the steak that was already cooked. And yeah, it's five minutes old, but whatever. And grab the potatoes and we're good to go. And we got our buffet or whatever. Okay, cool. So, you know, you got into this 3 years ago. Tell me, like, what was it about Hightouch 3 years ago that made you go, hey, this is where I need to be?
Yeah. So I was one of the first customers of Hightouch. So about 5.5 years ago, they had pivoted out of Y Combinator. It was really just 4 employees working on this new concept. And we actually purchased them when I was at Red Ventures. We were very invested in paid media, and we wanted to get data and audiences from our warehouse into Facebook, Google, all the different ad platforms. And our CDP wasn't cutting it. So we said, hey, let's give these guys a shot. We know that they were quite successful in their last exit at Segment. Let's just see what they can do. And we really bet on the team early. After rolling it out for about 2.5 years, I knew firsthand what it could do. And like I saw the transformative power of this architecture. So for me, jumping over at a Series B where we had 20 employees, like that sounds somewhat risky, but like, honestly, I got to see it behind the scenes for about another 2.5 years before that. So I trusted the team, trusted the product. And honestly, it was kind of a no-brainer that this was where the world was heading, and that the rest of the CDP space would soon follow suit. So I really got to just see it as a customer firsthand. So I was fortunate enough.
There's no better believer than the disciple who's come from the customer. So that's awesome.
That holds true for about, I think, of our 200 employees. I want to say there's like at least 10 that are ex-customers. Probably pushing 15 now.
You know, I love that too. Whenever I have that happen, and I can just be like, hey, like don't just take this person's word for it because they're on the team. You know, they used to be on your side, you know, and they did this. So yeah, the skin in the game factor is awesome. So your title is GM of AI Decisioning. Now that is a pretty specific title, and we're going to talk about your article in a minute here. But where did that come from, and why is that like a whole? Why do you have to be a general manager of AI decisioning?
Yeah. So when I started at Hightouch, again, we had 20 employees. We were a pretty scrappy startup. I came over as MarTech evangelist, which God knows what that actually means. Startups have crazy titles. But really what that turned out to be was just explaining to marketers what this new paradigm and what this new shift meant for them, really evangelizing it to them. And that turned into a product marketing team. So now we have a team of 6 product marketers where 5 were not actually product marketers before coming to Hightouch. So we have practitioners who are in seat, and our job every day is to explain to folks how and why Hightouch makes sense for them. Okay. So over time, I built out the product marketing team. And I think for me, what I continue to find my strength in is when we go into new investment areas, kind of new greenfield opportunities to go create a category, things like that. And AI decisioning is our newest product. It's our biggest bet as a company. It's what we raised our Series C on. So really leading the charge on AI decisioning. So I now have everything from a go-to-market perspective rolling up to me. So whether that's our marketing capabilities, our marketing investments, so product marketing, paid marketing, as well as our field team. So we have AEs and SDRs all focused on really evangelizing this as well. So really anything market facing around this new product investment area is kind of where I sit today. And then working very, very tight with the product team.
All right. And what makes my heart sing is, okay, so you're in charge of this whole product line. It's the biggest thing for Series C. And what do? You go out and create a piece of content and help people with some thought leadership. So I've got this up. I'm going to go ahead and try and put this on screen. Nice. Let's take a look here. And I want to actually unpack this article because I think there's some cool ideas in here, whether someone wants to use Hightouch or not. You've thought through some really cool ideas. And so for people that aren't following along, the headline is Gen AI will give us near infinite content. What happens next? And when I first saw this and before I reached out to you, this is why I reached out to you. I thought right off the bat, my God, if there's one more thing that I need to realize, that while AI has made content really interesting and has done a lot to help content, it also is now the new problem,
Exactly.
And it's just made content like we thought it was going to be easier. Like, yeah, you don't have to write that press release anymore. AI will do it. Except now everybody can do that. So guess what? Your job just got way, way harder. So I'm really curious about this. So clearly you wrote this to be a thought leadership piece for your product, but why this article? Maybe you could tell us just a little bit about why this was the topic for you and who you want to read this.
Yeah. So I think for us, one of the hard parts with AI decisioning and right now in the space, like we thought CDP market was crowded. We thought that it was a buzzword. We thought that it was a bit vague for people to know what a CDP truly was. And like AI is that problem times a million. Like there is AI nonsense every single day. And some of it's very real. I am incredibly bullish on AI. I use ChatGPT all the time for everything search wise, like my life. But again, like we have to really cut through the noise and make sure that this whole idea resonates to teams. And we've been thinking a lot about the decisioning space. So AI decisioning, for those who aren't aware, the whole idea is that instead of building manual rules for all your campaigns as a marketer, let's say you're trying to drive a cross sell. The old way was going in and actually building an audience and then building out all the rules and different pieces of content that should individually be sent to each user, right? Like the problem with that world is that it's not actually one-to-one, and it's based on the rules that you're actually defining today. We see a huge opportunity to bring in AI, specifically reinforcement learning, to actually go in and learn about every individual customer and make decisions on an actual one-to-one basis. So AI decisioning, marketers provide the content, they provide guardrails, and most importantly, they provide the goals. And then the agent goes and figures out what each user should receive. So when you think about that paradigm, content becomes very important. Well, today, Gen AI is everywhere, right? Like you see it all over the place of, hey, Gen AI can now do this, or ChatGPT can now do this, or this is more realistic now because of Gen AI. Well, in a world where you have all of this like limitless content, how do you decide what to send to each user, right? And like old world paradigm of, okay, I'm going to build an audience and I'm going to build rules for each one of these different campaigns. Like that just doesn't work at that scale, right? When you have 3 million pieces of content to potentially send to someone, a marketer is not going to go in and make those different rules, right? So the whole idea behind AI decisioning and really this thought leadership piece is like, hey, as content becomes easier to create, how do you decide? And that's the world that we live in. That's really what we're focusing in on as a product today, is the decisioning piece of this kind of flywheel, which there is a diagram in here if we want to pull it up, but.
We will. One of the things I thought was interesting about this is, gosh, what was it? Okay, so it's a little bit old now. It was like 12 years ago. I had a client who was a diabetes blood glucose monitoring machine, right? And so what they wanted to do was they wanted to reach out and build what they called, quote, one-to-one relationship with everybody who got type 1 diabetes. And we understand the journey really well, right? Like, you don't feel so good. You go to the doctor and you get hit with this thunderclap of news, right? You have type 1 diabetes, and you're like, oh my God. And that's when this program starts, because they start to register for a blood glucose monitor. And that was our entry point. And so what we did was we tried to use things like, what type of diabetes do they have? Is it type 1 or is it gestational? Is it type 2? Is it a male or a female? Is the person young or old? And we would kind of create like this like flow chart of these maybe 12 paths. And these 12 paths, then we had content prepared. And it started with like really basic stuff of like how to get control of your life, down to, we thought we were so fancy because, if you were a young woman and single, then we would have a tip article on how you could go to the bathroom and discreetly like inject yourself so that you don't look like a drug user in front of your date, and how to do that so that you could just and get your life back, right? And we thought that was state of the art back then, right? Now, what you're talking about with AI decisioning is we could take all that content and mix and match it into our world today without having to do these crazy flow charts and these really rigorous if this, then that, paths. Right. And so that's what you're talking about here. Right. And so can you give me an example of somebody who's starting to do this and like what they're doing? And then we're going to dive into a couple other concepts in here, but tell me a story about this.
Yeah. So we have a couple really strong logos that folks would definitely recognize. So like PetSmart, we just presented with, they're trying to drive in-store grooming appointments. So they don't, and in-store grooming is a very highly sticky conversion event for them. Getting someone to actually go in-store, bring their dog in, and it's more of a services play than it is, say, like a purchase online, right? Historically, they were building all these decision trees. They were using batch and blast campaigns where they would look like months in advance and say, hey, how do we get these users to go in store? And then building out all the individual nodes. Today, they're simply providing the content, the guardrails around, hey, maybe we don't want to send users in this region more than a couple email or 2 emails a week, right? Like you can set guardrails around the agents and then provide the outcome. The outcome is an in-store grooming appointment that they're trying to drive towards. And what they're seeing is they're giving the system more creative to actually go and learn from. And it's giving them back insights about the users, about the types of content that resonates best with certain dog breed parents or certain age groups or demographics that they otherwise never really would have thought to look for. So it's really taking that lift off of them of building all those individual decision trees based off of dog breed or loyalty status. And it's able to just look at all those attributes and figure out, how do I get that customer to that desired outcome, which to them is an in-store grooming appointment. One of my favorite ones, not to bring up 2 here, but Whoop. It is a fitness wearable. I think I love it is. There's the Whoop.
Hey, I'll just a quick interrupt, but like, yeah. I started this podcast because I absolutely thought it was the coolest thing in the world that Whoop CEO, decided that he would do a podcast and do a really good one, by the way. He does a fantastic podcast, but Will Ahmed is his name. Will's podcast is great. And it does create like a Whoop community. And I was like, that's the roadmap. So anyways, please, Alec, go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I have watched that podcast and it's absolutely great, or listen to it. But yeah, so Whoop's lifecycle marketing team, they have all these different subscribers all across the world where they're tracking their fitness metrics. And they're trying to drive cross sells into apparel and accessories. So how do I get someone to just go from being a Whoop subscriber to purchasing Whoop bands? I don't know if you have the stock band on right now, but they sell like other types of bands that you can also get and add on. And they were doing this with A/B testing. So they were saying, hey, this week we're going to try a different subject line. This week we're going to try a different piece of content inside of the email. And over time, they were able to see performance lift, right? Like inherently, A/B testing will allow you to find the champion, move on, and continue to test. But they came to us and said, hey, what could an AI agent do, right? Like if I gave you all of my existing subject line tests, all my existing content variants, all my existing assets, and I let AI decide, what could it do instead of a human? So we put those head to head, and in a matter of 6 weeks, they saw a 10% lift. Literally 6 weeks. So like not a lot of time for the system to learn, but it's just able to make decisions at and I know it sounds corny, but beyond human scale. AI can just simply do more. It can look at the individual context about every user and figure out that, hey, person A needs maybe a different tone in the email or different content in the email than person B. So they're quite excited by it. They're projecting something like a 25% lift on this use case by the end of the year by continuing to actually create new content. And more importantly, they're thinking a lot about the insights that it's bringing back. So my favorite one from them is they learned that users with the top activity of martial arts respond really well to swimming creative. They're like, why would that be the case? Like, what? This is like super weird trend. They dug in and they learned that those users are looking for a low impact way to recover. So they're learning more about the content and the trends and the users that they otherwise never would even thought to test for or look for in their data. So it's quite powerful, not just from a decisioning and performance perspective, but from an insights perspective, because the agents are able to expose that all back to them.
And that really is, I think, the big thing here, because you've got this graph on traditional marketing, and we've got it up on screen. But if you're just listening, the idea is that I could pull up an email marketing tool. I could go put in if I'm really fancy, 3 different subject lines, send that out to half my install base, and wait and see what happens, analyze that, and then I'll pick the winner and I'll roll that out to the other half of the install base, and I'll get a lift in my marketing response, right? But that's so manual. And you made one point in this article up above where you said, what happens if you can generate 50 subject lines? Well, there's no way with today's tools that I think of the tools that I use for my marketing. There's just no way that I would be able to do that. Not in any kind of like scalable way, but AI can, right? And I think Absolutely. That your model here is really cool, because not only is it about subject lines, but when you're talking about agentic marketing, what you're saying is AI is going to try some weird shit that I just would never try, right? Like I'm going to send swimming content to a martial arts person. I would never in a million years think to do that. Yeah. But they're doing these experiments, and they're doing them at such a more rapid pace that they can see trends, and they don't even have to know why the trend is occurring. We can figure that out. I know all of us want to know like why, but the agentic AI is just realizing I'm getting results here, and it can run so many more experiments than we can, right?
Yeah. And two things I'd put onto that. Like we keep saying subject line, and like that's absolutely a big decision to make. But just what about all the others, right? Like time of day of week, sequence, asset, coupon modules for retailers, right? Like apply that same concept of pick the best subject line, but now apply it by 50 different variables, right? And like that's what this is actually doing. Like when you start to zoom out, and you can pick and choose. Sure, you could use AI decision for just subject lines. That's fine. But really where this thing gets powerful is now when you tie all those decisions together and let AI fly, it's insane what it can do. The one call out here, though, is like, as we built this from day one, trust and observability were the top thing we knew we had to get right. Marketers are used to this paradigm because of like Google and Facebook, but they get zero idea and zero insight into what's happening and why. It just says, hey, here's your ROAS, right? And you like kind of hope that it did a good job of attribution. So what we've built, and like you brought up the like swimming and karate, you can basically set guardrails on every single decision. So you can say, hey, if I'm a mortgage marketplace and I don't want a certain mortgage provider, maybe even the mortgages as a whole going to a given user, I can set guardrails so that the AI can't even like decide with beyond that constraint. So you get full trust that the system's operating within the swim lanes of which you are defining for it. But then within those, it can fly.
And I think that what you're addressing is the freak out, right? Because I think AI causes everybody to freak out. We're all scared of like the big brother freak out. But I think their freak out comes in a couple different dimensions, and you just hit on one of them, which is, will the AI do something that would embarrass the brand, or do something that really, really offensive, or God knows cancelable, or whatever the hell? That's one barrier. The other barrier, though, and I'd love for you to talk about this one for a minute, and you do address it in your article a little bit, is, there are a lot of content marketers who are wondering if they're going to have a job in 12 months, right? That they're just going to be completely replaced by AI. And so what do you say to that?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think to us, it just changes what it means to be a marketer. In the same way that at Red Ventures, we did a ton of paid search. So if anyone here is a paid search marketer, you probably used to create budgets and keywords and campaigns for every individual keyword. Google came out with Performance Max, and now you just don't do that, right? Like now you think differently. You think about inputs, you think about content, and you use the keyword strategies like differently. So it's the same thing where, hey, in this world, we're not taking the jobs of a marketer. We're just simply shifting the work from manual role-based building to guiding AI, thinking about outcomes. What am I trying to drive? What do I want to prioritize? How should I work with my data team to get better inputs into the system? Or what type of content should I feed to it, right? Like in the case of that Whoop example where they learned that swimming creative worked well, now they're adding more swimming creative. Now they're adding more categories, and now they're adding more into the system to choose from. So your job just goes from manual work where you're building all these rules to more of a, how do I guide AI to do its job best? And then setting the guardrails. Like, again, everything we've talked about is decisioning. It's your existing content, your content that you provide to it, and it will do decisioning, right? This article talks about Gen AI, but today in Hightouch, we're very much focused on the decisioning piece. So as a marketer, you're still creating that content, right? Whether it's Gen AI or you just manually creating it and you're just providing that to the system.
Yeah. I look at it slightly differently, which is, let's say that your job before produced, twice what your salary was. So somebody who's right out of college, content marketer, they're making 50 grand. They're only hired because they were making the company 100 grand or 150 grand, right? Otherwise they wouldn't have that job. So two things are going to happen with AI. One is they're going to completely eliminate everything that you did before, and get rid of you. It's going to happen to some people, right? So sorry, it's going to happen. Yeah. But really more than likely is that if you master the skills of things like AI decisioning, and what you can do is that your job that used to produce $150,000, you are now in a position where you could produce $500,000 for the company because of the work that you've done. And if you can do that, guess what? You're not leaving. Why would somebody get rid of that? Unless they were just an accountant who was like, well, their exact job function is automated, so they're gone. You'll get another job. Like that'll be okay. But for the most part, if you can master these tools, you're taking a step up, because the other thing is people who make $500,000 for a company get paid more. And that's also something to be thinking of. So anyway, I think that, your article is really great. I love the idea of the next generation flywheel here. And I think this is really cool. I do want to spend just a minute or two talking about this. If somebody doesn't have Hightouch right now, right? Help me connect the dots. What's the step that they take today that they could use to say, all right, I want to explore, something having to do with the next generation AI-based flywheel. How do I do it? Like, where do I start?
Yeah, I think for us, it's definitely finding the right use cases. So like this type of system and reinforcement, it's all powered by reinforcement learning, right? For that to work, you need scale. And like for scale, you need to have the right use case. You need to have the right business model as well. So like we typically will sit within any B2C. We look for industries that have large customer bases like retail, travel and hospitality, gaming, anywhere where you have like ongoing engagement that you want to optimize campaigns over time. So one, like make sure you're in the right spot. Like if you're a one-man marketing show at a small startup, this type of thing probably won't work. I encourage you to do A/B testing, things like that. But just from a scale perspective, it needs volume. So one, make sure you're in the right spot. And then two, really find the right use cases. Find places like win-back campaigns or cross-sell campaigns or any type of recurring purchase. And then start by A/B testing. Like start by trying a couple different variables. See if you can find lift. Like, can I think about variance in content? Like, sure, subject line of save 50% versus save 50% off might produce a lift. But think about like very different aspects of your content, right? Like maybe it's save 50% versus, I don't know, maybe not even offer at all, right? And start to test those things. If you can see that there's lift there and there's opportunity, then I really encourage you to go and start to look at AI decisioning platforms like Hightouch. It plugs right into your existing stack. You can get started with the tools that you already have. It's not a difficult tool to onboard. The hardest part of AI decisioning is really overcoming that like hurdle of this is just a different way to think about marketing. So yeah, start to do some research in the tools, start to get used to this type of like testing and definitely explore AI decisioning as a category.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, I think that the combination of this testing at a scale that we have just never seen before, with the ability to pick and choose wisely and do the content so that you can actually conduct the tests, I think it's kind of amazing. I mean, I go back to, books that I read when I first got into this 20 years ago. And, the state of the art was like John Capels and his tested advertising methods, right? And one of the things that he said in there is, I have seen a 19x response rate between one headline in an ad versus another headline in an ad. And, and I just keep coming back to that as, yeah, we're in a digital world, we're doing different things, but you know what? That 19x, it's out there in all these other subtle little ways now. And, how many different points in your conversion do you have to get a 19x lift in before you're like, oh my God, that was awesome,
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So I've got what
really quick last point to that. Just
yeah.
AI,
Okay.
Because we talked about the Gen AI flywheel, right? And the whole idea behind that blog is like, in a world where you can create so much content, if you had a system that could test through that, you can find those 19x's, right? So like for us, yes, you can get started with the content you already have, but like the future we're building towards is those things working together. So it's learning about swimming being a big driver. It's going to create more swimming type of creative or certain tones, right? Now there's always got to be a human in the loop, spot checking, making sure it's on brand. Hey, is this something we want to send out? But like once that flywheel gets going, you find 19x's all the time, right? Like the system's just inherently able to do that.
Yes. And of course, the other thing that everybody needs to remember, if you're skeptical, is if you don't find the 19x, your competitor is, and that 19x is coming at your expense, right? So, this is a really cool tool, but like it's just moved the constraint curve out, and like the game's we're on the next level of the game, right?
Absolutely.
So, 5 years from now, we're probably going to laugh about the primitive ways in which we did things, and people will tease us about the 2024 and before era. So Alec, this has been awesome, man. Thank you so much. I think that, Hightouch and your ideas on AI decision making are really, really cool. If somebody wants to know more about what you're thinking, what you're doing, how do they find you, and how do they find Hightouch?
Yeah. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Alec Haase, and then Hightouch, or just alec@hightouch.com. If you want to just send me an email, that's more than fine. And then hightouch.com. The site, I'd like to think, has all the information you need from a blog perspective or about the product. But yeah, our team's always happy to jump on calls and just talk through what you're thinking. It's one of my favorite parts about Hightouch is we're not always trying to sell. So always happy to just jump on and jam with any practitioners in the space.
Well, thanks, Alec. You got a lot of cool ideas, and I really appreciate you being on Content Kingdom.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully these are not controversial questions. All right. Yeah, no. I didn't ask like, so, Republican or Democrat? No, there's nothing. Pro-life or pro-choice? No, nothing like that. No. Yeah, bye. Favorite movie or Netflix series?
Remember the Titans. I'm a big football fan.
Ooh.
I think it's just an all-time classic.
Okay, who's your team?
Unfortunately, the Carolina Panthers. But we're looking up. So, we're coming back.
I grew up in Detroit, so if you have the Lions as your team, like you don't judge anyone.
I grew up in New Jersey and just chose wrong. So,
favorite book?
I'm gonna do a self promo here. We just wrote a book. It's called Adapt or Die. One of the authors. I think there's some other folks in the podcast that are also authors, so I'm gonna go with that.
Do you have any nerdy hobbies?
Oh God. Yeah, I am so deep into MCPs right now, and like AI, it's all I can think about. It's not good. My wife makes fun of me all the time. I try to just talk about it with her, and she just is like, you're too much of a nerd. I don't want to talk to you. So
drones, love them or hate them?
Oof. I think I'm just upset with drones right now because they opened up drone delivery in Charlotte, and it's from this one spot where it's a 2-mile radius, and I live 2.5 miles. So I can watch the drones, but I can't get the drones to my house. So I'm just upset right now. I think I'm just
love them too much, and you're just feeling the FOMO.
I'm feeling the serious FOMO.
Android or iOS?
I don't understand the green bubble thing. I just don't. I'm a blue bubble guy, iOS all day long, and no one even try to argue me on it.
All right. Well, me and my Samsung S21 might be able to do it one day because I take superior pictures.
Where's the end button?
Coffee, beer, whiskey. Why is whiskey the best?
Honestly, all three things. Sounds like my day progression.